It's thick white boy season.
Come on. And go heavier. Yeah. All right, guys, we're doing shoulders and arms today. As you can see, I'm actually starting with some mobility work, but more importantly, this is like rehab work. I actually saw it from, I think his name is Ben Patrick, which is knees over toes. He has this like shoulder routine to sort of bulletproof your shoulders. So I'm trying it out to see if it actually works for my shoulder. And I'm already noticing, well, I'm not noticing benefit yet, but I'm noticing how weak my right shoulder is, which is the shoulder that always gives me nagging pain and discomfort, for external rotation. So like, it's painful as shit. This is what I'm doing here is for external rotation. So this shoulder here, this shoulder's strong and fine. This shoulder is super weak through this range right here. Once I get to about here, I'm good, but that's also because the resistance profile of this, the resistance lets off at the top here. But that being said, it gives me good insight to know that it's probably one of my rotator cuffs, probably my infraspinatus, that is causing me a lot of this discomfort that might be just super weak or could have, I don't know, a tear. I don't think it's that extreme. I think it's more so just overused and sprained. So I'm just doing these. And then as you saw before, when I had this bench up on an incline and I was doing these Y raises, my focus for those is more of the lower traps. So I'm trying to target more of those lower traps. Those lower traps are going to attach to the scapulas and keep them stable through movements, especially overhead movements, presses, things like that, which we are going to get into. So I'm trying to strengthen and dedicate time to actually target the lower trap, which helps with pulling those scapulas down as you raise your arms up. So as I'm doing them, if you noticed, I'm retracting first, getting that scapular retraction, and then raising up as much as I can. But I don't know if it translates through the camera, but my mobility is pretty horrible, especially through my thoracic region. So it's something I need to work on, which is why we're doing this. And then, sorry, quickly for the form for the external rotations, I'm using my knee. I'm actually resting sort of this part of my elbow on my actual knee, or slightly in front. I don't want it off to the back here, because if it's here, I'm gonna lose stability and it's gonna slide off. So I wanna actually have it a little more forward, and that way it gives me something to push into the entire time. So I'm actually pushing my knee into my elbow and pushing my elbow into my knee, creating a counterweight, creating more stability through the movement. And I'm coming down the full way. I'm not letting my shoulder dip forward. So I'm keeping my shoulder stable and locked in position, and I'm strictly trying to work on externally rotating. But that being said, we are going to start with some shoulder presses. I'm going to do a couple warm-up sets and then probably about 4 working sets. Today is going to be more of like a high volume, kind of like our chest and back days that I've been doing. I've been liking the high volume, so we're going to be doing a higher volume shoulders and arms. But it's going to be go time. The focus is to remain focused through the duration of the workout, be intentional with all the movements and the form and execution, but still trying to push ourselves, trying to push heavy, progressive overload in terms of actually increasing the load today. But we're gonna see where this takes us. My shoulders are a weak point for me, so I'm really gonna try to focus on the form and execution, and maybe try to pull back the ego a little bit in terms of the overhead pressing. So let's get after it. All right, this is gonna be working set number 1. I just did the 2 warm-up sets. I did them back to back, minimal rest, like always. For the 4 sets, the duration of these 4 sets, I'm gonna save failure for the last 1 or 2 sets. I'm going to pyramid up in weight. Again, my shoulder is a bitch. It takes so much to warm up and it hurts. So instead of just jumping right into heavy, heavy weight and trying to push, you know, right from the beginning, we're gonna pyramid up gradually. And then the last 2 sets, hopefully I'm at that point where, you know, I'm hitting reps around that 8 to 10, preferably failing around like 8. But yeah, so we're gonna pyramid up. I'm gonna start with, trying to think, start with 80s. Okay. I think we're gonna stay there for another set, for the second set. I mean, I don't see myself going much heavier than 80 anyways, like by a lot. Like I did, like my max I think is like 95, and that's pushing it and feeling kind of borderline instability and also borderline ego lifting. So an extra 15 pounds, I'm not saying that's not a lot, but we're gonna do one more set here. Third set, I'll probably go up to 85 or maybe 90 and just try to do 90 for the last 2. That's probably what we'll do. There's 5. Again, my right shoulder's giving out. It's just a bitch. Some days it's like smooth sailing, and other days it's just not. But I'm gonna try another set there. Worst case is, if I only get 5 on the next set, I might just do like a brief drop set. Go down by like 20 or 30 pounds and just slow, controlled reps. Just try to get this shoulder firing properly, but it is what it is. Or maybe we'll do a couple sets of like a machine press. Maybe that's what we'll do. Just kind of lock in the shoulder, get better stability that way. Maybe we'll try that. All right, 4th and final set is coming up. I'm gonna give myself probably another 1.5 minutes just to really give myself enough rest time to see if I can push past those 5 reps. For my form is, first and foremost, is a setup of this bench. I like using this bench here, like an adjustable bench, as opposed to your typical utility bench like that, or that one there, or that one over there. Doesn't matter, either or, it's the exact same bench. Reason being is I can adjust this backrest up to a specific angle that feels best for me and my shoulder. So like I mentioned earlier, my mobility is not the greatest. I do tend to arch my back because it allows me to just feel my shoulders more in the movement. If I crunch in, I feel like I'm too rounded forward. That's just the way my spine is shaped. You guys can argue against that. That's just how it's always been for me my entire life. I find arching my back for most of my presses, including chest, especially incline, I just feel better and I still get really good activation in the muscles that I'm trying to target. So I adjust this backrest up, not too far back, obviously, because I don't want to work upper pecs, but back enough that I'm not cranking my lower back in if it's upright or straight like a utility bench is. So I can actually just lean back slightly, still keep that chest up, and then I can focus primarily on my shoulders. Again, because I'm leaning back slightly, I might hit a bit of those upper pecs, but this is just how I like to do it. You guys can set it up however you want. Next is going to be the actual execution of the reps. I'm not thinking about bringing hands together necessarily. I'm thinking about bringing biceps in towards my ears. Okay, so I'm coming down for that full stretch, coming down the full way, but also coming down to what's comfortable for me in the movement. So I'm not trying to excessively come all the way down. I get a discomfort in my shoulder if I go past a certain depth. So I just come down and sort of match each shoulder equally. So right around here is usually the depth I come down in, maybe give or take. And then as I press, again, I'm thinking about driving biceps in towards my ears. I'm not thinking about bringing hands together. That's pretty much it. Give myself maybe 30 more seconds, and then fourth and final set. Hopefully I can be cool to get like 7 or 8 reps. This. Come on. Last one. Okay. It was good. It was 8. Pretty happy, pretty proud. I'm also lightheaded. Okay. Good. Okay, we got superset coming up. We're gonna superset lateral raises, where we're gonna do the internally rotated version of them, supersetted with some rear delt flies as well. Both dumbbells, both back to back. Still aiming for that 4-set range.
I have pretty thick thighs.
Yeah? You look good, man.
Biceps.
Yeah. That's really good.
I'm just thick.
No, you're making good results.
Yeah, I always been thick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're a thick boy.
Yeah, I'm a thick white boy. It's like Steph Posey says. You know Steph Posey?
Yeah.
He says it's thick white boy season.
Thick white boy season.
Yeah.
All right. All right, Kev. Get after there, brother.
When does the video come out?
This one's going to be 2 weeks from now,
Yeah.
but I filmed one yesterday, which will be this weekend.
Oh, cool. What,
Yeah.
What body part?
Back.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I watched your leg video. It was funny.
Oh, thanks, man. Great guy. Just one quick warm-up set for both. Second set. Kind of want to go a bit heavier. Lower the rep range, bring it to 8 to 10, as opposed to like 10 to 12. Third set. We got 4 that we're doing today. I want to go over the form quickly. For these lateral raises, again, shout out to Ryan Humiston. Not that he's going to see this video, but shout out to him for having this exercise. What we're doing here is we're internally rotating our shoulders. I'm not going aggressively with the internal rotation, so I'm not thinking about just cranking them as far forward. I'm just going to what feels comfortable. Again, this is all about what feels comfortable for you. So play around with different positions, but if you notice any discomfort when you're doing any movement, maybe back off or tweak things a bit in terms of your setup or your form to see if that kind of allows you to actually perform the movement properly for your body. So again, internally rotating. I'm also protracting, so pushing my shoulders forward, almost flaring my lats too. And what this is doing is it's keeping my shoulders, particularly my shoulder blades, locked and stable the entire time. So it's still allowing them to have what's called upward scapular rotation. When I elevate my arm, my shoulder blades will move out and rotate up. Now, this is still going to allow them to do that. It's just keeping them in more of a locked position and allowing them to do that, as opposed to, sorry, sweat in my eye, it's burning. As opposed to my shoulder blade, especially on my right side, I think it lacks stability. So when I'm doing movements, it might not be moving properly through the actual movement, which causes impingement or impedes on my actual mobility of the actual movement, and then that's what can cause the discomfort. Hopefully that kind of made sense. But the point is, not to get too sciencey, this is just allowing my shoulder blades to be stable through the movement, and then also sort of removing my traps, so kind of inhibiting the traps or putting them at a disadvantage or not a favorable position than if I were upright and coming straight out beside me. My traps, or at least my upper traps, are in more of a favorable position, so they're more likely to also assist and take over in the movement. But by protracting, internally rotating, I'm actually reducing the trap recruitment just ever so slightly. And then because we're internally rotating, that's actually taking out the front delts. So when I'm doing a lateral raise, I'm going to still be recruiting the front and rear delts in the actual movement. But by internally rotating, I'm sort of minimizing those muscles, again, placing them in more of an unfavorable position and allowing primarily these mid-delt fibers to do most of the workload. So that is kind of the theory and goal behind the setup and execution of this lateral raise. When we get into the bent over rear delt fly, same thing is I'm doing them standing and bent over. So the reason I'm standing and bent over as opposed to just seated here with my chest down, there's nothing wrong with this, you could do it. I just personally find, one, my breathing becomes restricted because I'm compressing my diaphragm and my chest on my knees. Two, I have long arms, so the weights tend to hit the ground. And then three, I'm still kind of on this angle, and I kind of want to target mostly the rear delt. So I'm actually leaning forward more in this sort of downward angle, allowing me to target primarily those rear delts, as opposed to being more in this upright position where I still can target some of the mid delt, because I don't really want to for this particular thing. I want to target mid delt first and then solely isolate the rear delt. But again, this is a lot of jargon and mumbo jumbo. This is just my thought process and why I'm doing the setup. You guys watching can do it however you wish. Oh. Oh man. All right, we're gonna move on. We got arms now, so that's it for shoulders for now. I know I said I was gonna do a machine shoulder press, but I'm tired. We're gonna move on. I still wanna do some arms. So we're gonna do machine tricep dips. Hopefully the Panatta one is open, so see you there. All right, guys, so we're doing this Panatta dip press, which I really like. The cool thing about this machine is you can adjust the seat. So I can actually face away from these handles, which is pretty cool. The reason I'm not though, and I'm facing into the handles, is because I just want to target more tricep. If I face the opposite way, away from the load, because of the angle of this handle, I'd be using more chest, more pecs, more shoulders. So for this purpose now, because I'm facing the load, my primary focus is just the triceps. So it's going to allow me to create greater amount of elbow flexion in this position, right? Because my hands are coming forward, whereas if I'm facing away, my hands are actually going to be going away from me. So I'm actually minimizing the elbow flexion. Plus, I'm more likely to lean forward, whereas this is forcing me in more of an upright position, which again is just going to allow me to isolate the triceps a lot more. Next cool thing is I can actually put this bar forward, which makes both sides unilateral, or I can open it up, which I have it open, which makes it isolateral, meaning I can work one arm individually to the actual weight. Now I have it open for that purpose because I always have, and we always typically have, one side that's more dominant. So if you have one arm that's more dominant, try to do stuff that's more isolateral, meaning that you are training each side individually, even though you're doing them both together. So that is kind of my focus for this. Okay, I'm gonna catch my breath. We're gonna do about 3 more working sets here. So we'll get after it. Okay, we can go heavier. I think I said bilateral there. I meant unilateral. Or bilateral, I don't know. I don't really care. You know what I'm talking about though. You get the memo. All right guys, so for the form, what I'm thinking about here is I want to keep myself locked and stable the entire time. Because I'm going heavy on this machine, I want to keep myself stable in this position or in this seat the entire time. So I want to lower this leg pad down, similar to what you would do when you're doing like lat pull downs. Lower that leg pad down because you want to create leg drive to keep your hips against the seat the entire time. If your hips start bouncing up off the seat through the movement, you're going to lose tension in the actual movement because you're losing stability, and you're going to be using a lot more momentum. Now, there's nothing inherently wrong with that, but you are going to run yourself at a higher risk of potential injury, especially when you're doing something like this with dips, where this is actually somewhat out of my active range, meaning like I have to manipulate my shoulder or my body in a position to get my arm even up this high. So technically, I'd even want this seat to be higher up, but I unfortunately can't adjust the seat higher up. So I'm just gonna try to make do with what I have and control the weight, control the movement, control the weight for the entire movement. Next is you can adjust these hand positions, these handles, whether you want them wider, really wide, or narrow. I have them set to the narrowest position, I believe. And this just allows me to keep my elbows tucked the entire time, okay? Now, what I mean by that is I'm not forcefully tucking my elbows in, but as I'm pressing in the movement, I'm bringing elbows in. So I'm allowing my elbows to move naturally through the movement. So I'm not keeping them necessarily tucked from the beginning. I'm just allowing them to be positioned in what feels comfortable or natural for me. But as I press, I'm focused on driving those elbows in towards me. Now, that kind of segues into the actual execution of the rep. Before every rep, because I'm in this position and these handles are so high up, I'm gonna be shrugging at my ears, which is actually what I want. So I wanna maintain this shrugged position the entire time. The reason that is it's gonna keep my shoulders locked and stable for the entire movement. Because as I'm pressing, I don't wanna be depressing my shoulders, right? I'm not gonna be using those pecs to pull those shoulders down. I want to keep my shoulders shrugged up at my ears the entire time to keep them stable because I want all the tension in the triceps. This is what it's going to look like. Now, hopefully you can kind of see the form, and what I was talking about is I'm keeping my shoulders shrugged the entire time, keeping my shoulders locked and stable through the movement. And then lastly, all I'm thinking about, again, is driving elbows forward. So as I push, I'm not thinking down. So I'm not just thinking about pushing those handles down, like I said, because I don't want my shoulders to go down. I'm just thinking about actually driving elbows forward, but actually into my side. So my elbows are both going to be coming in like this, right? So I'm here, and then I'm pulling elbows in, or pushing elbows in rather, squeezing the triceps. And then as I come up on that negative, I'm pulling elbows back behind me, stretching the triceps. Eight reps, I'll take it. That's it. Okay, we're gonna move on. We got biceps now. I think we're just gonna do like a regular traditional bicep curl with dumbbells. Back to a tricep, back to a bicep, and we're done. All right, I lied. We're doing this machine. We're not doing dumbbells right now. Dumbbells are one, a little overcrowded, and two, I really like this machine. I did this for my previous 2 arm days, and I'm really liking it because similar to actually what you guys have seen me in the past do on the preacher, where I use the back of the preacher pad while I'm standing to do just regular dumbbell curls, where I'm pushing my arms up against. I like using that because it gives me much greater stability in my shoulders, again, particularly in my right. But the great thing about this machine is it does it for you because it has these built-in pads. And the cool part is the resistance profile of this is actually heaviest in sort of this bottom lengthened range where my biceps are stretched. And then as I come up, the movement does get a little bit easier towards the top. So it just feels nice, for me at least, on my biceps. So that's why I like this machine. So we got 3 working sets here. Working set number 1 is right now. I just did the warm-up set, but we're gonna get right into it. Yeah, I really like this machine. This is a great one. This is really good. If your gym has something like this, whether it's the Atlantis or the Flex, I highly recommend using it if you haven't. It's a good machine. Plus, like, being seated allows you to just be more stable in the movement. Like, I can't really rock much because I have a back pad on me. I'm seated, so I can't really create as much momentum. I can still lean and rock a little bit, which is completely fine. I actually like doing that, but when you're doing standing, you're more likely to lean forward because of the weight, especially as you go heavier. So when I go heavier on here, because I'm locked in position, I can actually go heavy and place most of that tension on my biceps. Whereas if I'm standing and I'm trying to go heavy on dumbbell curls, it gets really dang hard. Like, the heavier you go, the more your body's gonna lean forward and you're actually gonna start to get overall fatigue actually first. So the limiting factor, for me at least, tends to be everything else, and then my biceps, kind of. Like, obviously my biceps will give out, but overall everything starts to get out. I start to get out of breath, and so on and so forth. So this is why this machine is actually great too. So Fourth and final set. The form for this is pretty self-explanatory. Obviously, because you're so locked in, like I've said, there isn't really much you can get wrong other than just make sure that the seat height is high enough where you want your elbows to be lined up with this axis of rotation right here. And then other than that, like, you can rock a little bit, you can use a bit of, you know, momentum or move through the movement, that's completely fine. But just try to focus on that stretch. Come all the way down, don't stop here. Come all the way down, open up those biceps, get that stretch, and drive your tricep, the backside of your arm, into that pad the entire time. Similar to what you would do when you're doing a preacher curl. You don't want to be curling up and having your elbows lift off that pad. You want to drive them into that pad the entire time. That's just going to keep that tension on the biceps by keeping that shoulder stable. So that's the form. We're going to move on. We're going to actually do the machine right behind you, which is going to be a overhead tricep extension, but on the machine, which is the Panatta machine. It's great. You know, like most of our training, I know there's sometimes overlap and there's sometimes redundancy to movements, but you want to try to hit the muscles from different angles. I'm a huge believer in targeting the muscles from all different angles. You're going to be able to actually get the most out of your workouts that way. So because we did a tricep dip, my arms are kind of behind my body anyway, so I'm still going to be loading the long head of the tricep in the shortened position, as well as obviously, you know, the lateral and medial head of the tricep as well. So what I mean by that is I'm literally working all heads of the tricep in this position for the tricep dip. So now, to sort of complement that, I now want to hit the tricep in this position overhead, or you could do a skull crusher too. But again, you want to hit the muscle from all different angles. If I do this and then I go to this, that's still completely fine, but this is kind of what I feel like doing today. So with that being said, we're going to get into it. Now, to sort of correct myself there, what I mean by doing the dip and then going into a tricep extension, there's still two completely different movements, because the dip, my upper arm is going to be moving through that movement, but because my arm is set behind my back, I'm still going to be targeting the long head. Now, why that's important is because if you're doing like a close grip bench press, my upper arm is still going to be moving, but I'm not going to actually have much tension on the long head of the tricep. So things like close grip or even like a JM press is going to primarily target more of that lateral and medial head of the tricep and not as much of that long head. Now, when you're doing just a regular tricep extension or tricep cable kickback, you're going to be loading primarily that long head. You're still going to be targeting the medial and lateral head. Don't get that confused. Like, you're never going to shut those muscles off or a part of the muscle off of your tricep. You're still going to be targeting them, but you're just loading that long head of the tricep primarily in that shortened range or in the shortened position, because the long head does attach at the elbow and it actually crosses the shoulder joint. So it does help with shoulder extension, meaning bringing your arm behind your body. And that's how you fully shorten your long head of your tricep. And you can even test it out yourself. Like, if you just extend your arm and then pull your arm back as far as it comfortably can go, you're gonna feel your tricep shorten and tighten and contract as hard as you possibly can. So you're actually targeting and loading the long head of the tricep in the shortened state. But that's all I meant. It still is complementary. So if you did dips and you did do a tricep extension, 100%, that is completely fine. I don't want you guys to get confused. I just like doing overhead instead, because now I'm loading the long head in more of a lengthened state. A little bit heavier. I swear, I used this machine, I'm not kidding, like 2 weeks ago, and this pad was perfectly fine. Now it looks like someone let their dog go at it. I don't know how the hell that even happened. This thing looks like it went from looking like it was a week or two old to now, 15 years old. Crazy. Fourth and final set. Now for the form for this, guys, like every other overhead tricep extension, you want to keep your shoulders locked and stable. They can move around a little bit, but obviously work in a range that feels comfortable for you and hold a grip width that's comfortable for you. So if you like wider, hold wider. If you like a little more narrow, hold narrow. Just know that the more narrow you hold, the less range that you may have, because as you come up, if your hands are narrow, the more likely your shoulders are going to want to come in like this. So it might just feel restrictive. Again, there's nothing inherently wrong with that. But control every rep, control that eccentric. But again, we're trying to go heavy on this. We're trying to push past our limits. So I'm still trying to control the weight as much as possible, but I'm not being so rigid and intentionally trying to slow every single rep down to the point that it starts to impede my performance on the actual contraction of the rep. Now, I'm not forcefully keeping my elbows tucked either. So if you notice, I'm allowing my elbows to just sit naturally to what's comfortable for me. So we're gonna move on. We got one more exercise, which is gonna be biceps, and I'm actually not quite sure what I feel like doing. So it's gonna be a surprise. So I think we're gonna do 2 sets here of incline curls and then finish with 1 or 2 sets of just a machine preacher. Again, just to hit the biceps from all different angles. This may look similar to the Atlantis seated curl that I just did earlier, but it's actually going to be slightly different. Now, the loading of it, I know that one, I think the profile of it is heaviest in the bottom position, but that's also different because even though I'm still targeting the biceps in a lengthened position, my arms are actually still in front of me. So because my arms are now behind me, I'm actually stretching out that bicep a lot more. So I'm targeting the bicep way more in a lengthened state than I did over there. And then to finish off, we're gonna target the biceps for 1 or 2 sets, just right to failure on machine preacher curl in a more shortened state. So that's kind of my thought process. Again, focusing on hitting the muscles from every angle today, or at least trying to for some stuff. Okay, last set here. Right to failure. Oh. Just a quick thing on the form is you want to adjust the bench up to a height that's comfortable for you, but have it far enough back that allows your arms to be past your torso so that you're stretching out that bicep. And then lastly, as always, keep that shoulder locked in position the entire time. Control every rep, control that eccentric. Okay, last thing over here. Be super duper quick. I know we've used this one countless times. I'm actually adjusting this cam now for the middle range. So I want to target primarily that middle range of this movement. Normally we have it set to 3, which is targeting the beginning range, but we just did 2 exercises that pretty much targets the biceps in a stretch position. So for this here, I actually want to target more of that mid-range, only because I'm going to get the most out of the movement. And what I mean by that is I'm going to be able to work through the greatest amount of range with the greatest amount of resistance. So it's more efficient that way. Whereas if I just target the beginning range, the resistance profile drops off right after that beginning range, and then there's next to no tension through this range here. So because it's in the mid-range, I have much more, like a more broad range of motion that I can actually work in, is what I mean. Now, only one set here, right to failure, like completely to failure. For the form, again, I want to make sure that my elbows are lined up with this axis of rotation here, and then having those biceps pointed forward. So in other words, I don't want my shoulders or arms to be sort of internally rotated like this. Some people grab the weights like that, or the handles like this, and they're sort of curling internally rotated. That can add a bit of shear force to your elbow. It may cause discomfort down the road or potential injury. So again, keep those biceps pointed forward the entire time, and then just hold whatever width you come up in. That's the width that you're going to drop your hands, and that's the width that you're going to hold. Right to failure. I think we're gonna do a drop. Okay. Drop set, I want to get a little bit more. Okay. All right, guys, that's it for today's workout. I wanted to do some forearms, but as always with the battery, we're running low. And my battery is running low too, so I'm pretty tired. That being said, look, I wanted to touch on this quickly from one of my last videos where I talked about, being present, focusing on the process instead of your goals. When you're focusing on the process, I know that term can be pretty vague and nebulous, but what I mean is focus on the where, the when, and the how. So where are you going to do it? When are you going to do it? And how are you going to do it? And that's all in relation to your goal. So don't focus so much on the goal, focus so much on the process at hand, and be in the process, be in the present. And as always, if you made it this far in the video, you guys are real ones. Thank you so much. Continue to work hard, continue to be diligent, be intentional with your movements. Take it easy, and I will see you guys on the next video. Thank you.